I'm Gordon Kennedy, and I'm a second generation music person behind my father, Jerry. He ran Mercury Records as a 24-year-old. He signed Roger Miller, and so my father produced all of those hits. Signed Reba McEntire, her first record deal, produced the Statler Brothers for 31 years, I think it is. Johnny Rodriguez, all of Tom T. Hall's stuff. He played on Pretty Woman, Roy Orbison, Elvis, Good Luck Charm, Bob Dylan's Blonde on Blonde double album, Ringo Starr's second solo album. He's the electric guitar on Stand By Your Man. He's Dobro on Harper Valley PTA. And if you listen to any classic country stations now on satellite radio, he's on about 1 out of every 3 things they might play as a producer or a player or both. Quite the bio there for my dad. He was 9 years old when my grandfather took my dad to get his first guitar lesson from a guy named Tillman Franks. And he gave my dad his first guitar lesson on that Friday, taught him how to play a song called How Far Is Heaven. And then the following Monday, my grandfather passed away. My dad continues to pursue playing the guitar. Tillman sort of takes him under his wing and is teaching him and mentoring him and almost seriously becoming like a father figure of sorts to my dad. My dad gets his first really good guitar. I think it was $90 in 1950, a Martin Double Aught 18. So Dad has this first really nice guitar. And I know that there's one story in particular that he told me about using it on a talent show. It was a Bob Wills talent show. He played a song called New Panhandle Rag. And when it got to the break, the guitar break, my father, 10-year-old kid at the time, put it behind his head. And he turned around so he could project to the microphone while he played this thing, and he won the talent show with that little Martin guitar. Tillman would ultimately ask to borrow it to let somebody else use on a show, and they were going to travel to do the show, and the guitar with all the other equipment for the show was packed on top of this vehicle, and so this guitar fell off in transit and hit the road. Tillman, after telling my dad and his mom that the guitar needed to be replaced, I'm assuming that my dad figured it was dumpster bound and totaled, and he said he would replace it, which he did. I would learn from Tillman's son, Ben, who's about my age, that when he was 14 years old, his dad, Tillman, had it fixed and gave him that guitar for him to start learning and playing guitar. So this is around 1973. 10 years after that, he's married and has small kids and has the guitar leaning up against the sofa one day when one of his little boys kind of does a shoulder block into the guitar and snaps the neck on it. So at this point, he has it in pieces, shows his dad. They send it to Martin, I'm told. So they got the guitar back, and then years go by, and Ben Franks has this acquaintance who is a Hank Williams impersonator. And the guy wanted to borrow the guitar, and Ben said, I felt sorry for the guy. I was trying to help him any way I could, so I let him borrow the guitar. And then the guy vanished with it. And Ben was brokenhearted. He said, oh my gosh, I'll never see that guitar again. At some point, and I don't know what year this was, and Ben didn't remember the year either, but a cousin of his called him and said, your guitar is in a pawn shop over here by my house. So Ben and his mother, Virginia, get in the car and drive over to this place and put $200 down to get the guitar back. So now it's back in the Franks family's fold again. And after Tillman passed away, he split all of his memorabilia and instruments and everything between the 4 kids. And the oldest daughter, Darlene, she ends up getting this guitar, and then it winds up in her attic in Shreveport, which is just like putting it in the microwave. She called my dad back in January and said, would you like to get your guitar back? He didn't even know what she was talking about. And she said a few things that made it click for him. Oh, now I know what guitar you're talking about. And yes, I would love to get that guitar back. So that's where we are now, anxiously awaiting the guitar's return from Nazareth.
So when I got this guitar, my first initial impressions was it's been handled a lot and there's some damage, so it's going to be an interesting repairing process because We don't know how many people worked on it. There's secrets underneath stuff. You don't know until you're kind of open up a can of worms sometimes. So my initial impression was, all right, we're gonna pull this and it's probably gonna come out in pieces. So I have to give credit to whoever worked on it and glued it, because we actually got it out, the neck out in one piece without re-breaking the fracture that happened in the heel to begin with. So then taking your time removing that bridge to get it off, since we're gonna be like refinishing everything, so we're ripping all the parts off and just redoing everything, getting everything lined back up and stripping everything down and smoothing everything out that we possibly can. So then fixing the crack, the crack was glued previously from somebody else, and I would say 18 inches long all the way around. It was pretty much half the body. We had some supports in there to make it structurally stronger. So stripping the finish off, another thing you want to take your time with. Lighter grit sandpaper, not being aggressive with it. As you work your way around the body, just paying attention to the wood, the bindings, especially the side cracks where the damage was. Just really focus and pay attention to that. So then it'll go over to the neck fitter. So our neck fitter will basically pre-fit it. That coworker will put it together, get everything set up. You're gonna have chiseling, cutting, maybe some sanding, adding a shim, just to get the geometry correct now that everything's been fixed, straightened out, stripped. After that's all set up and it's good to go, then it'll go back to the finishing people, and then that's when they'll do all the finishing process of filling it and putting the lacquer on it and staining it, if anything is getting, putting the Martin logo back on it or a stamp. They'll do all that, and then after that goes through its period of drying times and sanding, respraying. Sometimes they gotta rework areas that were damaged and they might sink in a little bit, and we try to get everything as smooth as possible. So now it's just kind of fine-tuning everything. Everything will get sanded down with a real fine micron sandpaper and get any imperfections out. They'll polish it, get it all shined up and set up and ready to go back to the neck fitter for the final fit. That's basically the final step of getting everything lined up and the geometry of the neck and the bridge, the angles and everything put back together so they work. Something older like this, we built the bridge back up because it was thin. It was Brazilian rosewood, so we wanted to keep it original. So we'll fill that back in with rosewood, and then we'll route it back out, get a nice clean channel again, make it deeper if we need to, so it holds the saddle better. Then it'll go into the stringing area. A new pick guard, new pins, reslotting the nut slots for the strings, restringing everything back up.
Just watching him hold the guitar, and I could tell there was there's something going on in his heart about, having something in his hands again that he hadn't had since he was a kid. There was a joy about that guitar returning to him even after all these years.